All right, so today we're going to dive into something called the Body Shop Business Trifecta.
Ooh, trifecta. That sounds kind of.
It's kind of catchy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And this is specifically, if you're a body shop owner listening to this or an entrepreneur thinking about maybe getting into the auto industry, this is really a framework that's designed for you.
Okay.
And it's basically a 10-year strategy to really integrate your business growth, how you can grow your business, but also link that into your own personal finances and ultimately how to secure your family's financial future.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, because a lot of body shop owners, they're, working in their business day in and day out. They're so focused on, the next repair order, the next customer.
Right.
And what this trifecta does is it really gives you a roadmap to make sure that all of that hard work that you're putting in is actually going to lead to personal and generational wealth. Yeah, you don't want to be, 20 years down the road and you've built this thriving business, but you haven't really thought about, how that translates into, what you want for yourself and your family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about looking beyond just fixing cars.
Right.
It's about building a legacy.
Exactly, yeah. And so we're going to kind of unpack this trifecta, and it's a 10-year plan that you should be thinking about. It's got 3 core pillars, so we're going to go through each one of those.
Okay.
Business operations, personal finance, and family wealth strategy. So it's really, it's a whole comprehensive approach to building success on really all fronts of your life.
And that's what's key, right? Is this interconnectedness.
Yes.
You could have a profitable business, but if you're not managing those profits strategically for yourself personally, and you're not thinking about your family, you're really missing out on the full potential.
Yeah, you're just working in the business. You're working on the business and you're not working on your own life.
Exactly. So the trifecta helps you see that bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the first pillar, which is business operations.
Okay.
And this isn't just about, turning wrenches and fixing cars. It's really about how to optimize your business for long-term growth, how to make it sustainable and profitable over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about building a really strong foundation that's going to support all your long-term goals.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, when you think about a body shop, you think about, fixing cars, right?
Oh, yeah.
But this is really about shifting your mindset
Yes.
to think of it as a true enterprise.
Yes.
How do you make it more efficient? How do you make it scalable so it's not just relying on you, all the time?
Yeah, you don't want to be the bottleneck of your own business.
Right. So you want to be able to kind of step back and let it run.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few key areas that they talk about in the trifecta. And the first one is streamlined processes. So this is about putting systems in place that can cut down on wasted time and reduce your costs, which, ultimately leads to happier customers.
Right.
So think about, everything from how you initially assess the damage when a car comes in, how you order parts, how you schedule repairs.
Yeah. That's all about efficiency, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about saving a few dollars here and there today. It's about creating a business that can handle more volume, more complexity as you grow.
Yeah.
If you have very inefficient processes as you try and scale up your business, it's just going to create chaos.
Yeah, it's going to implode.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second part of business operations that they talk about is revenue diversification.
Okay.
So this is looking beyond just your core repair work that you do. Are there ways you can expand detailing services?
Mm-hmm.
Are there ways you can partner with insurance companies and get direct referrals?
Right.
It's really about, having multiple streams of income so you're not just solely dependent on one area.
Yeah, that's smart. And it also adds a layer of security too, right?
Yeah.
Because if, let's say, one aspect of the industry faces a slowdown, having those other revenue sources can really help you weather the storm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just makes your business more resilient.
Yes, exactly. And then the third piece of the business operations pillar is setting a really clear 10-year vision.
Okay.
So what are those big milestones that you're aiming for over the next decade? And they suggest, things like maybe you want to expand to a second location.
Right.
Maybe you want to increase your annual revenue by, a certain percentage, maybe 50% over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
What are those big goals that you're really driving for?
And having that long-term vision, it's like a North Star for your business, right?
Yes.
It guides all the decisions you're making today to make sure that you're actually on the right track.
Yes.
Because otherwise you get caught up in the day-to-day, the urgent stuff, and you lose sight of where you want to be ultimately.
Yeah, you're just working in the business.
Yeah.
You're not working on the business.
Exactly.
Right. And so the crucial takeaway from this first pillar, this business operations pillar, is that by strengthening how your shop runs, you're creating a consistent and reliable source of what they call ordinary income.
Okay.
So this is that regular profit your business is generating
Right.
from its core activities.
Right.
And that income is what's going to fuel both your business ambitions, but also all of your personal financial goals down the line.
It's like the engine
Yes.
that powers everything else.
Exactly.
The well-run business provides the engine.
Exactly.
And then you can use those profits strategically, which is
Yes.
what the next pillar is all about, personal finance.
All right. So let's move on to pillar 2, which is personal finance.
Okay.
And this is where we start thinking about how the financial success of your body shop actually translates into your own personal financial security and freedom for you as the owner.
And this pillar is so important because, like we were saying before, a thriving business, it's great.
Right.
But if you're not managing those profits and using those profits intentionally to benefit you outside of the business, you're really missing out.
Yeah.
So it's about building your own financial safety net and creating options for your future that are independent of the shop.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the key elements here is investment income.
Okay.
So this is the idea of taking a portion of your business profits and reinvesting it strategically into different assets.
Right.
And they talk about things like, real estate, you could buy rental properties.
Right.
Stocks, you can invest in the stock market. Retirement accounts,
Yeah.
401ks, IRAs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the goal here is to start building what are called passive income streams.
Okay.
So income that's not reliant on you
Right.
actively working every day. So if you own a rental property
Yeah.
and you have tenants in there, they're paying you rent.
Yeah.
That's passive income.
Right.
And so what's really interesting here is that you're shifting your wealth building beyond just the value of your business.
Right.
So you have these other investments that are working for you
Yes.
that can provide income and security, even if something happens to your business.
Right.
The economy takes a downturn. Who knows?
Yeah. It's all about diversifying your portfolio, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not having all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. And then the second part of the personal finance pillar is debt management. And this one might seem kind of obvious, but it's really important. It's about actively working to pay down any high interest liabilities you have. So things like credit card debt.
Yeah.
Maybe you have some business loans that have high interest rates.
Right.
And the reason this is so crucial is because as you free up that cash flow by paying down those debts, that extra money can then be directed towards those long-term investments we were just talking about.
It's like high interest debt is a drain
Yes.
on your resources, right?
Yeah, it is.
So by aggressively tackling it, you're freeing up more capital
Yes.
to invest, and it just improves your overall financial health.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the third component of this personal finance pillar is establishing emergency reserves.
Okay.
And so this is your financial safety net. It's having readily accessible funds to protect you and your family if unexpected expenses come up.
Right.
So, maybe there's a major home repair.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a medical bill that you weren't expecting. Or maybe even, your business has a dip in profitability.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. That peace of mind that comes with knowing you have that safety net
Yeah.
is so valuable because it prevents you from having to make, rash decisions or unfavorable decisions when you're in a tough spot.
Yes, and you don't want to have to liquidate assets or take on more debt
Right.
when you're in a pinch.
Exactly.
And so the overarching goal of this personal finance pillar is really to create a 10-year plan that directly aligns your business profits with your personal lifestyle goals.
Okay.
So, whether that's you want to retire early, maybe you want to travel,
Right.
maybe you want to fund your children's education. This is where those dreams start to become concrete, actionable plans.
Yeah. You're connecting the success of your business to the life you want to live.
Exactly.
And then naturally that leads to thinking about your family.
Yes.
Which is the third pillar.
Okay, so let's move on to pillar 3, which is family wealth strategies.
Okay.
And this is where we really start to expand the focus to include your family in your financial planning and thinking about how to create a lasting legacy that goes beyond just you.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond your own financial well-being.
Right.
And starting to consider how do you transfer your values, your knowledge, your wealth
Yes.
to your loved ones?
Yeah.
And how do you build something that endures?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the key strategies in this pillar is establishing a family advisory board.
Okay.
Now, this might sound kind of formal,
Yeah.
but the core idea is
Yeah.
to have a regular meeting, maybe once a year, kind of like an annual family summit,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you bring together your spouse, your children, if they're old enough, and
Right.
maybe some trusted advisors that you have, and you openly discuss the business and your family's financial progress.
Yeah, what's really powerful about that is it creates this intentionality
Yeah.
around these conversations. Often these discussions happen very sporadically,
Yeah.
if at all,
Right.
but by creating a formal space for it,
Yeah.
it encourages that open communication, that
Yeah.
shared understanding.
Yeah. And it kind of makes it something that's, regularly on the schedule.
Exactly.
So you're not just, kind of ignoring it until it's too late.
Yeah.
And at these family advisory board meetings, you'd set an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So, you talk about how the business is performing. You review your personal finance goals.
Mm-hmm.
You discuss any family wealth initiatives you might be considering.
Yeah.
And then crucially, it's about actually involving your family in this process.
Right.
So maybe you assign age-appropriate roles to your children. Like,
Yeah.
help me track this investment or, manage this small family project.
Right.
And it's really about teaching them responsibility.
Yeah, that involvement is key for fostering financial literacy
Yes.
within the family. It's not just about inheriting wealth, it's about understanding the principles behind it.
Yes.
And that empowers them to make their own informed decisions.
Exactly. And then, of course, at these meetings, you would also track your progress.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at metrics like, how is our business revenue growing?
Yeah.
What are the returns on our investments? How much have we saved in taxes?
Right.
And it's really about, seeing how you're doing against those goals that you set.
And it becomes a collaborative effort, right? It's not
Yeah.
just you working on this by yourself.
Exactly.
Everyone has shared understanding and they have a stake in the outcome.
Yeah, everyone's bought in.
Exactly.
And so the other interesting strategy within this family wealth pillar is what's called a family management company.
Okay.
And this is a tactic that specifically leverages the SEC Corp structure
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of small businesses operate under.
Okay.
And it can offer some really significant benefits, both from a tax perspective, but also in terms of educating your children about business and finance.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting for family-owned businesses.
Yes.
Because it's a real win-win.
Yeah. So the way it typically works is if you have children or other family members that are under 18,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually hire them to perform legitimate work for your body shop.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're doing things like helping with social media, maybe they're doing some clerical tasks,
Mm-hmm.
and you pay them a reasonable wage up to the standard deduction amount that the IRS sets.
Okay.
And they mentioned in 2025, that's going to be around $14,600,
Mm-hmm.
but that can adjust from year to year.
Right.
And the really cool thing about this is that income that you pay to your children up to that standard deduction
Mm-hmm.
is tax-free for them.
Oh, wow.
But because it's a legitimate business expense,
Right.
your body shop, being an S-Corp, can deduct that amount,
Okay.
which lowers your overall taxable income.
So you're reducing your tax burden.
Yes.
And they're getting tax-free income.
Yes. It's a win-win.
Wow.
And so you're not only saving money on taxes, but you're also providing your children with income that they don't have to pay taxes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the framework suggests that you can take those earnings
Yeah.
and you can put it into a savings account for them, maybe an investment account,
Yeah.
maybe an education fund.
Right.
So you're really giving them a jump start on their financial journey.
And you're also teaching them about work and responsibility.
Exactly.
They're earning money.
Yeah.
They're learning about, the value of a dollar.
Yes.
And all while providing a legitimate service to your business. So it's a fantastic strategy.
Yeah, it really is.
But of course, keeping thorough records of the work performed is crucial.
Yes, always good to cover your bases.
Absolutely.
And then the third element of this family wealth strategy is what's called generational planning.
Okay.
And this is taking an even longer term view,
Mm,
thinking beyond just the next few years.
right.
And it involves using various legal and financial tools like trusts,
Mm-hmm.
estate plans,
Mm.
More sophisticated investment vehicles,
Yeah.
really to ensure that the wealth that you've built can last for decades
Wow.
and benefit your children, your grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
and even future generations.
So it's really about leaving a legacy
Yes.
that lasts.
Yeah. And so, a trust is basically like a special container for your assets.
Okay.
And you put in very specific instructions on, how and when those assets are distributed to your loved ones.
Mm-hmm. And it can also help minimize estate taxes and ensure a smooth transition to your heirs.
Yes, so you really want to consult with legal and financial professionals on this
Yeah, for sure.
to make sure it's done right.
Absolutely.
So, we've explored these three pillars:
Hmm.
business operations, personal finance, family wealth strategies,
Right.
all within this 10-year framework.
Yeah.
And it really raises the question, why is this 10-year perspective so important? What's the benefit of thinking that far out?
Well, I think it fundamentally shifts your focus from
Yes.
those short-term wins and losses
Right.
to building something that's really sustainable and impactful.
Yeah.
It gives you that clarity, that North Star to help prioritize your decisions.
Yeah.
You're not just reacting to what's happening in the business today.
Right.
You're making choices that are intentionally aligned
Yeah.
with where you want to be in a decade.
Yes. And it also builds so much resilience
Mm-hmm.
into both your business and your personal finances.
Right.
So by planning for the long term, you're much better equipped to deal with any economic fluctuations,
Mm-hmm.
changes in the auto repair industry,
Right.
personal challenges that might come up.
It's like having that longer runway
Yeah,
to adapt and adjust.
exactly. And it ultimately ties back to that idea of legacy
Yeah.
that we've been talking about. So a 10-year framework ensures that all of your hard work
Mm-hmm.
benefits not just you,
Right.
but your children, your grandchildren, maybe generations beyond that.
Yeah, it's about creating a positive impact
Yeah.
that lasts.
Exactly. And, if you don't have that long-term foresight,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day
Yeah.
and just miss out on those crucial opportunities to build wealth
Right.
and secure your family's future.
You're just working in the business.
Yes.
You're not working on the business or your life.
Exactly. And so the trifecta is really designed to help you stay focused on that bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And to illustrate how this can work in practice,
Mhm.
the framework gives an example of the Smith family. They own a mid-sized body shop.
Mm-hmm.
And before they started thinking with this 10-year approach, they were profitable,
Okay.
but they were kind of, inconsistent.
Yeah.
And they didn't really have a unified plan for their family's long-term financial well-being.
Right.
It was all kind of haphazard.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a real-world example of how, this framework can be applied.
Yeah, I like that, it takes these concepts and shows how they can be applied in a tangible way
Yes.
to a business owner, just like you listening.
Exactly. So in year one, after they implemented these trifecta principles,
Mm-hmm.
the Smith family saw a 20% increase in their revenue
Wow.
just by streamlining their operations.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Just for making things more efficient.
Yes. So, they made their processes more efficient from, when a customer walks in the door
Right.
to when they're finally, billed.
And that highlights the power of focusing on the fundamentals of your business.
Yes, absolutely.
Small improvements can lead to big gains.
Yeah, compound over time.
Exactly.
By year 3, they had used some of those increased profits,
Mm-hmm.
guided by their personal finance plan,
Right.
to buy a rental property.
Okay.
And that property was generating $15,000 in annual investment income.
Wow. So now they're starting to build those passive income streams.
Exactly. So those business profits are now working for them outside of the shop,
Right.
adding another layer of financial security.
And diversification.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Fast forward to year 5, they implemented that family management company strategy we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to pay each of their 2 teenage children a little under that $14,600
Okay.
for legitimate work they did for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And that resulted in an estimated $8,000 in tax savings for the family.
Wow.
And those earnings were put into college savings funds for the kids.
It's that synergy we were talking about,
Yeah.
tax savings for the business,
Yes.
work experience for the children, and a boost to their college savings.
Yeah. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
And then by year 10, the Smith family was able to retire comfortably.
Wow. That's the dream.
Yeah, they had a thriving body shop that could continue to run.
Mm-hmm.
They had a diversified portfolio of investments,
Right.
and they had even set up a trust
Mm-hmm.
to benefit their grandchildren.
Wow. So they really embodied all 3 pillars
They did. They really did.
of the trifecta.
Yeah. And it's a really great example of how, this integrated long-term approach can transform a business from just a source of income
Mm-hmm.
to a vehicle for real family prosperity
Yeah. I love that.
that lasts for generations.
So inspiring.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the Body Shop Business Trifecta,
Hmm.
it's clear that this is more than just a few business tips.
Right.
It's really a fundamental shift in how you think about your business
Hmm.
and its role in your overall life
Yeah.
and your family's future.
It's about being proactive and
Yeah.
strategic. And, whether you decide to take the first step by scheduling a family discussion about your goals, maybe that's the start of your family advisory board.
Yeah.
Or you start exploring, the family management company.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing is to take action
Yes.
towards building that long-term vision.
Yes. And so that brings us to our final thought for you today.
Okay.
What is one action
Mm-hmm.
that you can take right now, today,
All right.
to start mapping out your own 10-year vision
Mm-hmm.
for your body shop, for your finances, and for your family's wealth,
Yeah.
your hard work, and most importantly, your family deserves that focus and attention.
Absolutely.
And if you want to explore this framework further,
Mm-hmm.
you can find more information and resources from Bill Park at bill@crunchitfs.com.
Okay.
And their website is www.crunchitfs.com.
Perfect.
So that's all for today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
This was a great discussion.
Yes, it was.